I've always believed a man's land is his last line of defense. Out here in rural Texas, property means more than just dirt and fences. It's legacy, livelihood, and freedom wrapped into one. That's why, when 5 SUVs rolled down my gravel driveway that August morning, I knew something wasn't right. They didn't have sirens, no lights, just blacked-out windows and the kind of slow, methodical entrance that sends your gut twisting. I was fixing the pump near the south fence line when I saw the dust cloud. Thought maybe it was UPS or some neighbor with a busted GPS. But when the cars stopped and out came half a dozen men wearing khakis, sunglasses, and fake badges clipped to their belts, I knew I wasn't dealing with any delivery. One guy stepped out holding a clipboard and a smug little smirk that screamed, "I think I own you." His belt had a taser and pepper spray, like some rent-a-cop mall guard who played too much Call of Duty. "You Kyle Braddock?" he asked, strutting toward me like he'd rehearsed the line in the mirror. "Yeah," I said slowly, not moving an inch from the pump. "Who the hell are you?" "Sundown Bluffs Homeowners Association Enforcement Division." That made me blink. "Enforcement what now?" "We're here to conduct a code compliance inspection of your property." That's when I started laughing. "You've got the wrong man. I'm not part of Sundown Bluffs. Never have been." The clipboard guy's smile didn't flinch. "We recently redrew boundary lines. Your property now falls within the HOA's area of responsibility." "You can't just redraw boundaries," I said, stepping toward him. "That's not how land ownership works." He shrugged like it was above his pay grade. "Our paperwork says otherwise." Behind him, his goons were already spreading out. One of them started snapping photos of my workshop. Another was talking into his walkie-talkie like he was coordinating an assault. "Hey," I barked, "you step foot in my barn and we're going to have a real problem." Clipboard guy held up a laminated piece of paper, some fake notice claiming this was a legal inspection. It had the HOA logo and some made-up ordinance numbers, but I'd seen enough HOA scams to know this was smoke and mirrors. "You boys are trespassing," I said, pulling my phone from my back pocket and hitting record. "And this is all going on camera." The guy's smirk faded. "Sir, put the phone away." I didn't. That's when things escalated fast. One of them shouted, "We got a shed full of possible unregistered chemicals." Another hollered back, "This guy's got livestock without permits." It was a damn clown show. Before I could call the sheriff, one of them kicked open the side door to my barn. My horses spooked, knocking over feed barrels. My border collie, Buster, started barking like mad. "Get out of my barn!" I roared, sprinting toward the door. Clipboard guy blocked my way. "You interfere, you're going to be detained." "By who?" "Your cosplay HOA militia?" That's when I realized they were trying to provoke me. If I laid a hand on one of them, they'd claim I assaulted an officer. Never mind they weren't real cops. They wanted me angry. They wanted me arrested. But I didn't give them what they came for. I called 911 instead. "This is Kyle Braddock," I said calmly. "I have multiple armed individuals trespassing on my property claiming to be HOA enforcers. I need a real deputy out here now." The operator didn't even hesitate. "Stay on the line. Units are en route." The moment they heard me say, "Sheriff," those guys got nervous. They piled back into their SUVs faster than ants from a kicked hill. Clipboard guy gave me one last look, the kind you don't forget. "You'll regret this, Braddock," he said. "This is just the beginning." I watched their tires kick up dust as they sped back down my road. I looked around. Broken barn door, scared animals, a split fence where one of them tried to pry open a gate, and felt my hands ball into fists. They thought I was some dumb rancher they could intimidate. They didn't know who I used to be. After the fake raid, I barely slept. I spent the whole night pacing my living room, running everything through my head on a loop. Those bastards didn't just trespass, they threatened me, violated my animal's space. They tried to pull some backwoods authoritarian stunt like I didn't know my rights. But what stuck with me most was the smugness on that clipboard clown's face. The way he said, "You'll regret this." That wasn't just a threat, it was a plan. By morning, I had brewed enough coffee to fill a bathtub and started digging. First, I pulled up the county parcel map. My ranch was marked clearly outside the Sundown Bluffs HOA jurisdiction. I still had the original deed from when I bought the land 10 years ago. 40 acres. No liens, no encumbrances, no HOA obligations. Period. But when I searched Sundown Bluff's website, something caught my eye. They'd updated their community development plan just a month earlier, right around the time they first started sniffing around my property. And deep in the PDF, buried in legal mumbo-jumbo, was a paragraph that made my blood run cold. Expansion Phase 4 shall incorporate adjacent rural plots deemed underutilized or blighted for the purposes of preservation, safety, and uniform community standards. Blighted? Underutilized? My ranch? They were trying to reclassify my home as some rundown lot that needed their protection. It was fake legalese, written to confuse, but I knew what it meant. They were planning a hostile takeover. They wanted to absorb my land into their overpriced, HOA-run Stepford Village. I started printing everything: maps, ordinances, bylaws, press releases, even Sundown Bluff's tax filings. Then I called an old buddy. His name's Daryl Morris. He and I served in Afghanistan back in 2008. He got out, went to law school, and now ran a no-BS law office in Austin, focused on land use and constitutional rights. If anyone could help me unravel this mess and shove it back down the HOA's throat, it was Daryl. He picked up on the second ring. "You sound pissed," he said. "They sent fake cops to my ranch, broke in, tried to scare me off my own land." He whistled. "HOA? Yep. You got it on video? Front to back. I'll be there tomorrow." Click. That's the thing about old military buddies. No long speeches, no questions about weekend plans. Just action. The next day, Daryl showed up in a battered Chevy Suburban, wearing a collared shirt with a Glock on his hip. He watched the footage on my laptop, nodding slowly, and when it was done, he leaned back and said, "They're dead." "Legally speaking?" I asked. "Oh no, I mean completely. We're going scorched earth." That's when the plans started forming. We'd sue them, sure, but not just for trespassing. We were going to uncover every illegal scheme, every forged boundary, every dollar they'd stolen or manipulated through phony enforcement. And we weren't going to do it quietly. We were going to bring this HOA down in public. But first, we had to provoke them. "We're going to bait the bear," Daryl said. "Let them think you're scared. Let them think they've got power over you." "Why?" "Because when people think they've already won, they get sloppy, and we need them to really mess up before we pounce." So I played dumb. I sent the HOA a formal complaint, not a lawsuit, just a letter asking for a written explanation of the raid, signed and notarized. I knew they'd deny it or deflect. Instead, they doubled down. 3 days later, I received an envelope. Inside was a formal-looking notice printed on Sundown Bluff's letterhead. "Second violation, unauthorized agricultural operation. Mr. Braddock, you are in breach of HOA landscaping and land use policies. All commercial or farming activities must be disclosed and registered. Failure to comply will result in daily fines and potential property seizure. HOA Compliance and Enforcement Division." That was it. They actually claimed they could seize my land. Daryl stared at the letter and grinned like a wolf. "They just walked into the trap," he said. "We were going to burn them. I'd been through firefights overseas, stared down IEDs on Afghan roads, but this legal ambush was something different. There was no battlefield smoke, no bullets flying, just paper. Cold, bureaucratic, weaponized paper, and it was just as dangerous. The Sundown Bluffs HOA had sent me a second violation notice, now threatening property seizure. A lot of people would have panicked, hired some half-asleep local attorney to send back a politely worded objection. Not me, and not Daryl. He looked at the notice like it was a confession. "This thing reads like someone with zero legal background tried to mimic actual authority," he said. "They want to bully you into backing down, but what they don't know is, now they've made it a federal issue." Federal? Yeah. Interstate fraud, RICO, abuse of power under color of law. And the fact that they impersonated law enforcement? You just hit the lawsuit lottery. Daryl started drafting a civil complaint that same night. It wasn't just about trespassing now. It was a full-blown legal war document, complete with charges of fraudulent misrepresentation, civil rights violations, criminal impersonation, conspiracy to unlawfully annex private property, intent to defraud with intent to extort, and my personal favorite, emotional and economic damages, to the tune of $10 million. We were going to sue the HOA, its board members individually, and every one of those fake enforcement officers. But we needed more evidence. "Let's see how far they're willing to go," Daryl said. "If they show up again, we want cameras everywhere." So I installed motion-activated trail cams all over the ranch, hidden in fence posts, trees, and even in the barn. I rigged my security cameras to auto-upload to the cloud. I even parked my F-250 by the main gate with a dash cam aimed at the road. Then we waited, and like clockwork, they came back. This time, it was 7 of them. 2 SUVs, 1 white van with Community Code Compliance Division scrawled across the side. The same guy with the clipboard strutted out like he was God's gift to land law. But this time, he had a printed warrant. Only this one was signed by someone named Judge P. Morrison. Problem? Our county doesn't have any judge by that name. I walked down the front steps slowly, phone in hand, already recording. "You boys get lost again?" I said, keeping my voice calm. "You failed to comply with HOA enforcement orders," clipboard guy barked. "We're here to conduct an escalation-level property inspection." "You mean another fake raid?" I smiled. "Got that fake judge signature from a cereal box?" One of the goons stepped forward. "Back away, or we'll detain you for obstruction." "Go ahead," I said, raising the phone. "This live stream is going out to 3 local news stations and my attorney. Please, show the world how you enforce the law." They froze. Clipboard guy looked around. "We don't need to escalate this." "That's funny," I said, "because last time you said this was just the beginning. So which is it?" They backed off. Fast. I watched them leave again, and this time I knew. They were scared. I had rattled them, and now I had the video footage of a forged warrant and attempted impersonation. That was enough to go nuclear. By the end of the week, Daryl had filed our complaint in federal court. The documents landed on the desks of the HOA board members, like bricks through windows. Some lawyer they hired from a strip mall firm in Houston tried to send us a cease and desist. Daryl sent back a copy of the lawsuit stapled to a printout of their forged warrant. 2 days later, we got an email from a whistleblower. Her name was Angela Sims. She worked in the HOA office. "I saw your lawsuit. You're right. They've been faking documents for months. The judge is a real estate broker named Patrick Morrison. Not a judge, not even a lawyer." She attached proof, emails, internal memos, even a scanned copy of the fake HOA enforcement manual. And just like that, the entire house of cards began to fall. Angela Sims wasn't what I expected. I thought she'd be timid, hesitant. Maybe someone scared to lose her HOA office job. Instead, she showed up at my ranch in a gray sedan, wearing jeans, a leather jacket, and the hardened look of someone who'd had enough. "You Kyle?" she asked, stepping out of the car like she already knew the answer. "That's me." I've got something you're going to want to see." She wasn't lying. Inside the manila folder she carried were pages of incriminating emails, messages between the HOA board members, meeting transcripts, and even scanned fake warrants signed by none other than Patrick Morrison, a local real estate broker who moonlit as the HOA president. Except, in several of those emails, they casually referred to him as Judge Morrison. "This guy pretends to be a judge on weekends?" I asked, flipping through the printouts. Angela smirked. "He bought a gavel on Amazon and started holding hearings in the HOA clubhouse. He tells residents they're legally bound by his rulings. Most of them believe it." "You're serious?" "I used to think it was harmless," she said, looking down. "But then they started targeting outsiders, people like you." According to Angela, this expansion phase 4 nonsense wasn't just a land grab. It was a scam. They'd hand-picked properties like mine that sat on the edge of the development, declare them non-compliant, then fine the owners into foreclosure or pressure them to sell at below-market prices. A few had already folded. One guy sold his land for pennies just to get away from the harassment. That's when I realized this wasn't just about me. They'd done this before. Angela leaned forward. "They're laundering those fines through shell companies. They funnel money from bogus penalties into HOA security contracts, which are owned by Morrison's brother-in-law." Daryl's eyes lit up when he heard that. "That's RICO, interstate racketeering. This just became federal crime territory." Angela handed us a USB stick. "It's all on here. I've been backing up their files for months." We knew what we had to do. Take the story public. Daryl called a contact at a local CBS affiliate in Austin. We gave them the footage, the forged warrant, the fake judge info, and Angela's testimony, on the record. The story aired 3 days later. The headline ran on TV, radio, and local news sites. People were furious, and the fallout was immediate. Residents of Sundown Bluffs started calling the station. Several told stories just like mine: raids, fake citations, harassment, even locked gates and seized tools. One woman said they towed her car out of her own driveway and charged her $800 to get it back. Then came the big one. The state attorney general's office opened an investigation. Patrick Morrison tried to do damage control, held a press conference on the HOA clubhouse lawn, flanked by his phony officers in polo shirts with little gold shields on them. But it didn't work, because while he stood there denying everything, someone from the AG's office walked up, handed him a subpoena, and said 3 words: "You've been served." I'll never forget the look on his face, but the HOA wasn't done yet. The night after the press conference, I came home to find my front gate busted open. My barn door swung wide, a smear of oil on the gravel. Inside the barn, every tool cabinet had been rifled through. My main water line was cut. The words, "This ain't over," were spray-painted across my workshop wall. They were trying to scare me off, but they picked the wrong rancher. I installed floodlights, bought a second generator, got new security cams with 3 60-degree motion tracking, and I moved my shotgun from the closet to the front hall. Then I called the sheriff, and this time they took it seriously. Angela agreed to testify. Daryl coordinated with the AG's office, and I prepped for the courtroom showdown of my life. Because the fake cops didn't just mess with the wrong man. They gave me a mission, and I don't quit. The courthouse smelled like old wood, cold air, and nerves. It was early fall by the time we finally stood before the judge. I wore my best boots and a clean denim shirt. Daryl, in his usual charcoal suit, looked more like a gunslinger than a lawyer. The defense side? 4 suits, 2 paralegals, and a sweaty Patrick Morrison who kept tugging at his collar like he was sitting on a powder keg. I was plaintiff number 1 in a civil lawsuit that had ballooned into a full-blown federal case. Angela Sims sat behind me. She'd lost her job the week after the story aired, but she said she slept better now. Half the Sundown Bluffs community was in the gallery, whispering to each other and glaring at the HOA board like they'd just recognized the devil in broad daylight. The first blow landed fast. Daryl walked the jury through the timeline, videos of the raid, photos of the fake warrants, official land maps that proved Sundown Bluffs had zero jurisdiction over my ranch. Then came the kicker. Daryl handed over a printed email between Morrison and one of his officers. He's ex-military. If he pushes back, scare him. Flash the warrant, he'll fold like the others. There was an audible gasp from the gallery. Morrison's lawyer objected, overruled. Daryl turned to the jury. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a coordinated act of fraud, deception, and intimidation. Then Angela took the stand. She testified for over an hour, calm, precise, devastating. She showed how the HOA manufactured violations, doctored complaint letters, and faked judicial authority to justify harassment and fines. She explained how the money flowed from residents into fake compliance fees, then into private companies controlled by Morrison's family. And when she read the part about expansion by intimidation, you could hear a pin drop in the room. The defense tried to paint her as a disgruntled ex-employee, but Angela never flinched. "She kept everything," Daryl whispered to me. "They're cooked." Then the AG's office brought in forensic accountants. Their testimony was the final nail. They confirmed over $2.7 million in fines had been siphoned into personal accounts, laundered through HOA vendor payments, and buried under shell LLCs. Morrison turned ghostly white. His lawyer requested a settlement during recess. Daryl looked at me and asked, "You want to settle?" "Hell no," I said. "I want a ruling." So we went all the way, and when the jury returned the verdict, I'll never forget what the foreman said. "We find in favor of the plaintiff, Kyle Braddock, on all counts. We award damages in the amount of $10.4 million, plus punitive damages totaling $5 million. The courtroom erupted. Angela burst into tears. Daryl just leaned back and smiled like it was all part of the plan. I stared straight at Morrison. He wouldn't meet my eyes. His fake enforcers had already left. Most of the board members resigned before the jury came back, and Sundown Bluffs HOA was officially under criminal investigation. But the story didn't end there. 2 days after the verdict, I got a knock on my door. It was a young man in a cheap suit, holding an envelope. "This is from the Sunset Ranch Development Corporation," he said. "They're offering to buy your land for full market value, plus a bonus." I opened the letter. They were offering me $3.2 million for my ranch, and they promised no further HOA interference ever. I laughed in his face. "You think this was about money?" I said. "Tell your boss I ain't selling, not for triple." He blinked. You're really turning this down?" "I didn't go to war, build this ranch, and fight corrupt neighbors so I could hand it over to another set of suits. You can tell Sunset Ranch to shove it." He walked off, stunned. I closed the door, poured a drink, and looked out at my pasture. The land was mine. Still standing, still free. But most of all, so was I. 6 months after the trial, Sundown Bluffs was barely recognizable. The wrought iron Sundown Bluffs sign at the front entrance was taken down, replaced with a plywood board that simply read, "Under state receivership, no trespassing." Their once flashy website had been shut down. The fake enforcement division was gone, disbanded, and under criminal investigation. Patrick Morrison was facing up to 18 years in federal prison for fraud, impersonation, and conspiracy. 2 of his board members had already flipped on him for reduced sentences. But me? I was still on my ranch, still waking up before the sun, still fixing fences and feeding horses. Only now the bank account was fatter, the phone rang a lot less, and nobody dared drive down my gravel road without an invitation. Word had gotten around. Don't mess with Kyle Braddock. People started calling me the guy who took down an HOA. Strangers would drive by just to look at the ranch, like it was some monument to freedom and stubbornness. I even got a call from a publisher in Dallas who wanted to turn the whole story into a book. I said maybe, but I wasn't doing it for money or fame. This fight had been about something bigger, about a man's right to be left alone, about standing your ground when the wolves come dressed like neighbors, about pushing back when people think they can write their own laws and make you follow them. Angela Sims ended up with a new job, community liaison for the Attorney General's office. She helps investigate shady HOAs across the state now. She told me I inspired her to stop being afraid and start fighting back. "You cracked the damn wall open, Kyle," she said, "and now everyone else can see what's behind it." Daryl got offers from 2 national firms, but he turned them down, said he liked being the guy who defended the underdog. We still grab beers once a month. He always says the same thing before we part. "You ever need a lawyer again? Don't call anyone but me." But not all the fallout was pretty. One night, around midnight, I saw headlights at the end of my road, not moving, just parked there, idling. I grabbed my flashlight and walked halfway down the fence line. When I shined the light, the truck peeled off, tires spitting gravel, no license plate on the rear. I don't scare easy, but that night I slept with the Winchester beside the bed, because I knew someone out there still wanted payback. Morrison had money, influence, friends in low places, and guys like that, they don't forgive, they bide their time. So I made changes, added a new gate with remote access, hired a friend from the Corps who runs private security consulting to install motion sensors, spotlights, and wireless cameras that stream straight to my phone. I wasn't going to live in fear, but I wasn't going to be naive either, because when you stand up to corruption, real corruption, the kind dressed in khakis and ties, backed by phony rules and community smiles, sometimes it comes back nastier than before. Still, I'll be ready, because I fought them once, and I won. 6 months after the verdict, the Texas legislature passed the Braddock Bill. It required all HOAs in the state to register with the Attorney General's office, banned them from forming private enforcement groups, and made it a felony to impersonate any kind of legal or law enforcement officer on behalf of an HOA. Angela called me crying the day it passed. "You did this," she said. "You changed the law." But I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a man who had simply done what was right, what had to be done. Out here in the hill country, we don't ask for much, just our land, our peace, and the freedom to be left the hell alone. Now, they know better than to try and take that from me again, because the next HOA that comes down my road, they won't be leaving in SUVs, they'll be leaving in handcuffs.